Hi, my name's Caroline. Welcome to my channel. I am a Humanistic Integrative Counsellor slash therapist working in private practice. I'm not taking clients at the moment because I'm fully booked, so I thought I would use some of my spare time to put some of the information I've learned and some of my experience into some videos. Hopefully it will help someone somewhere. So I'm in the middle of doing a series on recovering from heartbreak, and we are now up to step 4. So I have designed these series of videos to align very kind of loosely aligning with the Kubler Ross model of recovering from grief and loss. It's also used in the business world as a model of helping employees to transition during times of change. So you can actually use this model for all changes within your life, empty nest, retirement, yeah, just moving home. Trying to think of some others, can't think any off the top of my head, but yeah, any big sort of lifestyle changes, going from employment to self-employment, job loss, yeah, anyway, so that's my intro spiel. So yeah, depression is the 4th stage of the cycle, and as I said previously, you can dip in and out of any of these stages at any point. It's not a linear process, so depression can come and go, and you might have a small bout of depression, then it might go, and then it might come back again, depending on how you're doing, depending on the support you get, depending on other lifestyle sort of factors. The thing about depression is, in this situation, is that this is situational depression. This isn't what we might think of as clinical depression. So clinical depression would be something that you most definitely would want to, always go and see your doctor if you believe you have got depression, just to talk through your options. But if you have sort of serious long-term clinical depression that is not related to a romantic relationship breakdown, then yeah, that's something that really does need proper professional support. But just a reminder that the symptoms of depression feel horrendous, but they are actually very natural. But the side effect of those not great symptoms can be that you may feel that, trigger warning, there may be moments of such deep helplessness that you may feel at some point suicidal. I really hope that isn't the case, and if you do ever start to get any feelings like that, please do contact your GP, phone 999, call the Samaritans, call your therapist, speak to a friend, reach out. So important to get support if you do experience any feelings whereby you are, at that point where you feel as though you might be considering taking your own life, because these symptoms will pass as long as you are able to get the support that you need. So yeah, just sort of massive kind of trigger warning there, and and I really hope it doesn't get that bad for you. So the other symptoms to look out for are things like sleeplessness. So that can either look like difficulty going to sleep, or once you're asleep, sort of waking up really early and then not being able to go back to sleep. Or you can have, you know, joy of all joys, you can have a mixture of both. You can't go to sleep, but when you do get to sleep, you know, you're waking up, and that can make everything else feel so much harder to get through. If you're not getting the sleep you need to recover from your day, then yeah, life can feel like you're wading through treacle. You may have a loss of appetite, or you may have the urge to, if you have a tendency towards emotional eating, you may feel like eating a lot more. You may feel like eating quite unhealthy foods, sort of generally sort of high fat, high sugar content. You may just have this sort of, it's called anhedonia, and it's the inability to find joy in anything, and that might include food. You may just sort of, you know, you might find yourself, well, I'm going to eat because I know I am starving hungry, but I'm not inspired by food. You know, I'll just have a bit of toast because just not interested in nutrition or in feeding myself anything that is flavoursome and interesting. Obviously sadness is a massive sort of, can be a massive symptom, but not always. So you might find yourself crying sort of inexplicably, or you might have the opposite where you feel very numb, just very, very flat, disinterested. As I said, this feeling of anhedonia, just kind of feeling of real pointlessness, hopelessness, helplessness, powerlessness. You know, you might find it hard to work. You may find yourself withdrawing from friendships, or just not really wanting to socialize, which can be compounded by this idea that you know, sometimes it might feel really hard if you have been in a long-term relationship and you always did your socializing with your partner. It might then feel especially hard to go and socialize as a single person. You may be worried about what people might think. You might be worried about judgment of others. You may yeah, a big part of losing a long-term romantic relationship is this feeling that, you know, you may feel as though you've lost some of your identity if you spent a lot of time with your partner, if you didn't have sort of deep friendships outside of your romantic relationship. That might be something that's really tough for you, or especially tough sort of going forward. So yeah, generally you might find it hard to function altogether. You may not want to even do basic things like have a shower, go for a walk. There may be bills that need paying. You may just find yourself putting them off. You may feel very fatigued, lethargic. You may just want to stay in bed all day. Yeah, just not feeling yourself. You may have sort of inexplicable aches and pains that don't seem to have arisen for any particular reason. Although if you do get any sort of aches and pains, obviously, yeah, go and see your doctor just in case there is something medical that is an issue that needs looking at. Yeah, so it can be a right old rag bag of mixed symptoms. I mean, a lot of people think of depression as being, you know, you're crying and you're sad, whereas actually it can be a whole mix of different feelings, and very often you just feel nothing. So really, really rough. It's a really rough time. It's, in my opinion, probably the worst stage of the heartbreak kind of process, recovery process. And added to these horrible symptoms, it might be that you know, if you have leaned on your friends for support, which I really hope you have, friends and family, you may find that at this point, you know, possibly their patience might be wearing thin. You know, we're all human and we all want to support our friends, but they might be at the stage where they're a bit like, oh my God, you know, do we really have to talk about the breakup again? So you might be starting to find like a certain sense of impatience within your friendships, or they may not really know how to support you. That this is really common. Your friends, you know, in the early days where the early stages of the heartbreak, you know, everyone kind of rushes in, and this is what also happens during an actual bereavement. You know, early doors, you will generally get a huge amount of support, and then it's sort of after a few months, it kind of, you know, people have got busy lives, and especially because the early stages, there's this sort of urge to kind of, you know, what can I do for you, how can I help, and this idea that there is something that your friends can do, in inverted commas, as opposed to just kind of being there, being an ear, being a shoulder to cry on. And you may feel as though your friends kind of just don't really understand, especially if they haven't been through a similar process. You may find them being a little bit less patient with you, which can then really compound these feelings of isolation, rejection, abandonment. So you may feel like, well, you know, my ex has abandoned me, now my friends are abandoning me, or my ex never understood me and now my friends don't even understand me. And actually, you know, again, as with the previous stage, now is not the time to start, you know, reconsidering friendships, especially long-term friendships. That you know, if you've had these friendships for a long time, chances are, you know, you are just in a really deep hole at the moment, and yeah, they may not be able to understand, they may themselves feel quite powerless, but actually this is probably not the best time to reconsider friendships. Yes, so they are. I did a video actually talking about friendships before I move on. I did a video about like the golden rule of friendships and relationships, which basically talks about friends being able to empathize rather than minimize. So rather than, you know, really, if you can find friendships with people who are able to empathize with you, then that's really powerful. So just having, you know, someone around for coffee, and not even, you know, necessarily talking about the relationship per se, but just being there and feeling as though, you know, or just going for a walk. It doesn't even have to be anything big. Easier said than done. If you're depressed, you really don't perhaps always want to go for a walk. But this idea of empathise, not minimise. So minimising would be sort of trying to do something about it, or maybe people often are very tempted to sort of say things like, it'll be, you know, it's going to be okay, like it's not that bad, or, you know, it could be worse, or plenty more fish in the sea, or you know, try and set you up with all of their friends. And actually right now what you need probably is not to be set up with someone else, and not to be told that everything's going to be okay, or that, oh, you know, so and so had it much worse than you, or you know, or the classic one is, oh, I'd love it if my husband just left me alone for a while. Um, or I'd love it if my partner just, buggered off with the next door neighbour. These sort of flippant comments that people make, sort of in humour, but that can be just really unhelpful. Um, especially if you are a single parent and you are then, have all these additional responsibilities that you may not have had to shoulder before. Extra financial responsibilities, because it's not just about the loss of the relationship, it's about the other, I spoke about this in the last video, the other ripple effects of a relationship breakdown. So yeah, feeling lonely, feeling quite helpless, maybe wanting to curl up in bed all day, not really wanting to work, probably finding it quite hard to parent. And I suppose when you're in this spot, it can just feel like you are in like a big deep hole. And so the best advice I can give you is to remind yourself that to take one day at a time, to just put one foot in front of the other, and to just be as kind to yourself as you possibly can. If you are able to have a level of awareness around the idea that this is just a stage you're going through, this is not going to last forever. Because what we quite often do is catastrophize, have catastrophic thinking. So, we feel crappy for a week and our brain then starts saying to us, oh my God, you're always going to feel crappy. Oh my God, you're never going to want to get out of bed. You're never going to enjoy the things you used to enjoy. Why can't you just go and, put the washing on? Why can't you, plaster a smile on your face and just pretend that everything's fine? Why can't you do this, that, the other? And yeah, it's hard, and I would encourage you to, if you can, I would encourage you to not plaster that smile on. I know that's easier said than done. And if you are living with children, then you may feel as though it's important that they see you kind of getting through. But I think also it can be really helpful for kids for you to have that conversation with kids, and communicate with them that, you know what, I'm not feeling great at the moment. It's not your fault. I'm feeling sad about X, Y, and Z. I'll be fine. I love you, and don't worry about me. That sort of conversation, I think, might be really helpful for you to consider having with your kids. I think it's a fine balance as well. It's not ideal if our kids see us crying constantly. That might feel really tricky for them, but I also think it's really healthy for them to see us going through stages of grief and loss, because then we're modeling for them that life isn't always how it looks on Instagram and TikTok. Life is painful, but as long as we're honest about that, and as long as we are able to express our emotions as healthily as possible, then it's okay. We'll be okay. So that's something to think about. In terms of other ways to cope during the depression period, going back to the when I did a video about empty nesters, So there's the three C's: choice, connection, communication. So choice is the idea that you have got choices, even if it feels like they're very, very limited, you do still have choices. You know, you don't have to go to that party that you've been invited to if you don't want to. But could you push yourself through in order to do the other C's, you know, communication and connection? Could you say something like, well, I'm going to go, but I'm just going to go for an hour. I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to say hi, show my face, just to get a bit of social connection, you know, but also bearing in mind that, you know, if you drive there and you can't face going in, you can walk away. So you have got choices. And yeah, connection, communication is sort of, this is the message that runs through all the videos, is around, even though the urge will be really strong right now probably to isolate yourself, if you do have people around you that you trust, to just be as honest as you can. You may also be accompanied by feelings of sort of guilt or shame around the relationship breakup, but the way we can heal, we will heal faster if we connect to people that we trust. It's kind of as simple as that. And if we communicate our feelings, if we get them out rather than bottling them all up, or, you know, one of the potential side effects of depression, not side effects, but one of the potential coping strategies we might use with depression is, you know, downing one too many glasses of wine or eating one too many tubs of ice cream, trying desperately to numb those feelings, or distance ourselves from those feelings, where actually, as if you haven't come across Johan Hari on YouTube, he's incredible, and he did an amazing TED talk. It was quite a while ago now, talking about the opposite of addiction. So the opposite of addiction is connection, and this idea that addiction can come in if we don't feel as though we have got deep, meaningful connections with people in our lives. And that is more than just social media connections. It's developing sort of deep, long-term friendships with people. Again, easier said than done, especially when you're feeling like this. But if you're able perhaps to be honest with your friends and say, look, you know, I'm not sure I'm up for doing any socializing, but, you know, could I meet you for a coffee? Would you fancy coming round, and we'll get a takeaway? Could we just go and sit in the cinema, watch a film, and not really talk too much? And just be really honest about where you're at, because being really honest with yourself and with people that you trust is another sort of fast track to recovery, because all the time we're faking it, we're giving our subconscious messages that it's not okay to feel depressed, and actually that's not true. This is completely natural. This is our brain and our nervous system's way of finally allowing reality to sink in. You've been through the early stages where you've sort of fought against what's happened. This is the stage. This is the it's always darkest before dawn stage. And we have to go through this stage before we can get out the other side, before we can move into the stage of accepting, and then eventually integrating and making meaning. And it all the time we are plastering on a fake smile. And I mean, you know, we may have to do that, you know, to get through our day job, but at least in the evening or before work, if we're able to be honest with ourselves absolutely vital that we're honest with ourselves about how we really do feel, and honest with people that we love. Then that is, we're then giving our subconscious the message that it's okay. She or he or they are listening. You know, if we're not listening to the signals that our body's giving us that we're not feeling good, things aren't okay, then we will just push through. And all the time we're trying to push through, we're holding ourselves back, because until we kind of, you know, we do have to give in to these messages that our body's giving us. You know, if we can take a day off and just lie in bed for a day, do it. I know that's easier said than done, especially if you're a parent, carer, got your own business, got a dog that needs walking. But if there is any wiggle room for doing that, please do that. If you can take time off work, if you can get signed off sick, you know, if that is at all a possibility, you know, give yourself permission, you know, value yourself enough to say, do you know what, I just can't do it this time, I just need some time off. And the other thing that I would really recommend you don't do is, so now is the time when there will probably be a massive urge for you to get out there and find someone else. If you're feeling really lonely, if you're feeling really low, the lure of the dating apps can be overwhelming. If you're feeling like, oh my God, I cannot sit in this loneliness anymore, just want to have something that will cheer me up short term or long term, this can be a real tricky one, because of the massive choice out there. I mean, how many dating apps are there? Probably 10, 20, I don't know actually how many there are. And it may really feel like, oh, this is the answer to everything. I'll just go and find myself someone else, or I'll just go and date. And I'm not saying, yeah, don't do it, but I am saying really think hard before you do it, because I mean, this is a whole probably host of other videos as well, to be perfectly honest, but the rejection that dating apps can create, you're probably not likely to be in a place right now where you are going to be able to handle the rejection that you might, and you probably will, face on the dating app. Unless you look like, I was going to say Claudia Schiffer. God, I'm really giving away my age now, aren't I? I can't think of an up-to-date model. Well, no, maybe one of the Kardashians. You know, unless you look like that, and even if you do, you're still going to end up being rejected. Everyone gets rejected on some level on the dating apps, and if you're depressed anyway, to then have that extra layer, it doesn't fix anything. You may get a very temporary short-term high dopamine fix of, you know, being swiped on or messaging someone, but until you are in a position where you are starting to regain your own confidence and self-love and self-worth, then it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to give that to someone else. And, you know, some dating apps I think are worse than others. There may be some that are a bit, sort of inverted commas, safer in terms of, you know, not as likely to be at the pointy end of extreme behaviour, but I think by and large, generally it's a rough old world on the dating apps. You do really need to have a thick skin, and on top of that, what they can create, or what they can be kind of a tool to enable, is this dopamine fix that all social media hooks into. And so even if you kind of say to yourself, oh, I'm just going to go on and have a look, chances are you will end up being hooked into this dopamine cycle of swiping, messaging. And as I say, I'm not going to go into it too deeply in this video, because I think it is a whole other topic, probably about 10 topics. But this is just the time in which you will probably feel most tempted to go and do that. And I would just strongly warn against it. I mean, if you feel like you're coming towards the end of your depression, if you're starting to feel like you're picking up, then maybe a few dates might be nice, but I would just be super careful of yourself. It's not likely that you are fully through it if you are still feeling symptoms, and so it's not likely that you're, particularly if you've been in a toxic relationship previously, it's likely that you will fall back into the same trap of attracting other toxic people, or the opposite, someone who is very much a kind of rescuer and just kind of wants to scoop you up and save you. Well, actually what we want to be finding that middle path, whereby we've done the process ourselves, we've sorted ourselves out. We don't need to be rescued, and we certainly don't need to be treated badly ever again, if that is what you've experienced. We need to have picked ourselves up first before we're in any shape to invite someone else into our lives. So that would be my advice on the dating apps. I have had experience. Can you tell? I mean, and on a really practical level, there are a couple of things that really helped me. So alongside this idea of just being really honest with yourself and journaling and doing whatever you need to do to get those feelings out, and being really honest with your friends and family if you can, some daily rituals can really help. When I say daily rituals, I don't mean anything that is going to make you feel as though you're forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. So for me, when I was in my really tough stage, I committed to myself that I was going to go for a walk every day. I didn't set myself like a distance or a time that I was going to go out. What I actually said to myself was, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk every day. 10 minutes. I can do that. Even if I feel like absolute arse, I can manage a 10-minute walk, even if it's just to the shop and back. And what generally happened was, I was kind of tricking myself by saying to myself, I'm just going to go for 10 minutes. But generally, once I got out there, and because I didn't pressurize myself to be like, I'm going to go to the gym every day, or I'm going to go for a run every day, so it didn't even require me to put on special clothes. I just put on like trainers or some flat shoes. I got some DMs, bike boots. I wanted to remove any obstacles that I might have put up, any barriers to doing this. So I didn't make it that I had to do a massive workout. All I was doing was going for a walk, getting some fresh air, seeing other people. Because at the time, actually, I was on my own, completely living on my own. My son was at uni at the time, so yeah, so I was completely on my own. I was in a new town, didn't really know anyone there, so I'm committed to myself that even if I did nothing else, I was going to go for a walk. And a lot of things happened just on those really short walks, actually. Um, I, I found myself saying hi to strangers, and strangers would say hi to me. I didn't necessarily make any friends on my walks, but I started to get a sense of connection with the community, and I started to feel as though life just felt like it was a little bit lighter if I could get myself out. Um, some days I didn't manage it, and I'm sure if you're in this phase yourself, you'll understand that. And I just allowed myself to not manage it. I didn't beat myself up. I just reminded myself of this. There's a meme around breaking down the word depressed into deep rest, and that's what our bodies and nervous system really, that's what our nervous system needs, is this deep rest so we can process everything that we've been through. I also did a couple of other things. So I lived down on the south coast, and during that time there was quite a few homeless people living on the seafront, and there was one person in particular. I discovered that there was a young girl living in a tent right on the seafront. This was through the winter, and I actually found a sense of purpose by every day taking a little something for her, whether it was a packet of biscuits or some sanitary products, or a sleeping bag, a fleece, just a drink. I just sort of left it outside of her tent. Why am I telling you this? I'm not telling you this because I'm sort of virtue signalling, because actually I don't really know if it made any difference to her whatsoever. I like to think it did, because she's not living in that tent on the seafront anymore, and I have actually seen her walking around. She still doesn't look like she's in a particularly great place, but she doesn't look as though she's living on the streets anymore, but I don't know that for sure. The reason why I'm saying this is not because I consider myself to be, any kind of saviour in any way, shape or form. And I remember very clearly I dropped off a pack of like custard creams, and then a couple of days afterwards the packet of custard creams with only a couple of biscuits were left outside the tent. And I really had a word with myself, because I had to kind of check in with myself. Why am I doing this? Is this for her, or is this for me? And actually, if I'm completely honest, I think it was for me. I think actually she helped me probably more than I helped her, because it actually gave me a real insight as well into why am I buying her something that when she opens it one day is just going to go soft? Um, so yeah, I had to really dig deep within myself to try to understand, what I was doing that for. And so, and I did do that, which I think was really helpful for me. I hope in some little way that gave her a tiny bit of hope that someone gave a shit. I don't know. Anyway, that was something that gave me a sense of purpose, gave me a reason to get out and to go on my walk. Actually, it really, really helped me to, and it also helped me to get things into perspective. Horrible to say, really, but it just made me feel like, you know, things are bad for me, but I'm not living on the streets. And I say that with caution, because it's really important to not minimize what the feelings you're going through. Really important. So I know from personal experience how crappy it feels, but for me personally, it helped me to just get a little bit of perspective for myself. I mean, other little things you could do if you felt able to, without sort of having to go out, because you may not feel able to sort of really build new connections face to face. But there's so much you can do online if you felt able to. There's so many like little online courses you can take. I did a couple of sort of mental health courses, and that really sort of, if nothing else, it sort of I really engaged my brain, and it gave me that sense of purpose, that sense of achievement, that, you know what, even if the rest of my life felt like it was falling to shit, I still have a brain and I can still learn. I did some crafts, a bit of a bit of jewelry making, because again, it meant I didn't have to leave my home. I could squirrel myself away, and I could create something beautiful for myself. So yeah, that's a few, hopefully a few practical tips as well around sort of getting through this, oh, it's just the most awful phase. The good news is, like I said earlier, it's always darkest before dawn. And what the depression phase means is that you are finally starting to accept the situation and starting to come to terms with what's happened, whether you instigated it or not. And the last two phases are definitely the easier phases, the easier steps. So there is hope, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like I say, if you do at any point feel like, you know, it's all too much, please do reach out. There are people who are very well trained to support you at the end of a phone, the Samaritans in particular. So yeah, do not, you're not alone. You are not alone. Please remember that, and please remember it gets better. So this is a long video. I really, went down a rabbit hole there, didn't I? I hope it's been helpful. And if you did want to share any of your personal experiences, please feel free, if you think it might help others. I think I've been quite open and shared some of my crappy experiences, in the hope that it will help other people. So yeah, and thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me for 45 minutes. Oh my god. Yeah, and please like this video if it's been helpful, and I will see you on the other side, where we will look at the 5th step, which is acceptance. So thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.